Mr. City Attorney, you wanted to make an announcement?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. An amending motion, I believe, is going to be posted and circulated soon regarding item 1. The amending motion will request that the ordinance attached to the Planning and Land Use Management Committee report be altered to replace the fee amount listed in the type of application table on page 25, section 19.06.A, second entry, which is the entry for coastal development permit for single-family residential dwelling with no exceptions, and replace the amount listed with the amount of $6,876. If the speakers want to address that, I wanted to note the change in advance.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Let's bring Mr. Preven forward.
Sure, I'll nibble on that. It's Eric Preven from Studio City. Does this not involve the cost recovery idea that Mr. Englander had to jack the $89 appeal fee up to over $8,000? Could you clarify that, sir? Is that part of the amendment? I know you mentioned the coastal fee, which is $6,000, but you have not posted that amendment anywhere during this Brown Act meeting, so it's impossible to glean what that amendment was made, why that amendment was made so late, as opposed to sharing it and making it public so that other stakeholders, constituents, community groups could access it. And by the way, the CEQA panel of attorneys that you put into effect last week you have not provided how much cost recovery you've been, or whatever you want to call it, where developers pay a $25,000 retainer and then continue to fund city litigations against community groups, which was estimated to be well over $1 million, possibly millions of dollars that the city has been saving in its effort to crush community groups who are opposed to projects. So I would just ask that you do a much better job of outreaching, because you haven't made those numbers available, and they've been requested by Ann Haley and Mike Fuhr and Leela Kapoor up in the city attorney's office, Mr. Fauble. So I don't know what's going on there. It's worrisome, I would say. But anyway, I hope that the $89 fee remains the same, which would be great, so that folks could access the government without being sent bills from Rich Llewellyn. Now, 22 is the Junipero Serra Library, and I have to say thank you. Everybody loves a little funding for that kind of a thing. And item number 25, which I know you guys are already excited about appealing, evidently, but you shouldn't appeal because the guy was killed.
Mr.
Yes.
Preven,
Right.
you don't have
Yes, I
item
do, sir.
25.
Well, in fact, item 25.
Mr. Preven, I gave you the items you can speak on.
Okay.
Okay, if you want to speak on those items, go ahead. If you want to speak on some that you cannot speak on, then you have to sit down.
Right. Well, I appreciate that, sir. You also have a maritime response equipment first responder little package that you put together for Mr. Englander. It's $300,000, and $200,000 of which goes for radios. So that made me wonder, is this related to the Motorola shenanigans that you guys continually look away from? Because what you've had is you've had a radio contract that was virtually not competitively bid. And then what resulted was Englander pointing to a county RFP that was in high protest, but he forgot to mention that as he was celebrating the contract for which his father, Uncle Harvey Englander, has a lobbying firm that represents Motorola. So with Mr. Berghoff, who is doing an outstanding job, I want to say. And by the way, they provide a public service by informing the council members of how to vote, so that then later they can come in with briefcases with the campaign contributions that make everybody
item,
smile.
Mr. Preven. On the
Well,
item.
I mean, I think it's worth bringing up. What do you think?
Give him his 1 minute for general public comment.
Okay, thank you, sir. The 1 minute for general public comment, I would just like to thank David Rue for reaching out to the idea of redefining gravely disabled to include in some way a way to help people who are mentally ill and on the street. It's an interesting area. We have to be cautious about sticking a spike in the arm of people who may be crazy, because I know you think I'm crazy and I think you're crazy, and we don't want anybody saying that that's true. So what I would suggest, though, because I went to my local park and talked to some of the homeless people, was, you know, they confessed immediately that they were alcoholics. I couldn't believe it, but they said, yeah, we're drunks. That's what we do. And we live out here in the park, and we're safe, and we're not making fires, and we're not trying to do damage. But this is, you know, we're sad guys. We've had a heartbreaking series of things, and this is where we are. And so I was wondering if we should have some way to lure them into services by providing a kind of a happy hour where we actually lure them out of the brush where you're worried about them starting fires into a bar-like setting where they could exchange notes with social services people.
Thank you.